it's empowering because you learn, like, I can master my physiology. I can take myself from a heightened state of fear and actually go into a state of exceptional focus. It's hard, I think, to put into words for myself because it's a game changer.
I'd like to talk about yoga for a bit. I was a bit hesitant in the beginning to actually undertake a yoga practice. I told myself I wasn't quite flexible enough, and in retrospect, that just kind of seems silly, right? But I hear that from a lot of guys as an objection not to start a yoga practice. What would your response be to that objection?
Well, I think, like you said, in reflection, there's a little silliness to this. It's like, well, first, I think yoga is not just stretching. So that's the first misconception in the United States for a lot of people, that yoga is exercise and stretching. And it's not. It's a complete philosophical system that is designed to train the mind. That's really the basis of what yoga is. It's the science of the mind. And so it's psychology before psychology existed. And so much more. And one of the reasons people, what I tell people is I wasn't flexible. So you have to start where you start. Like, if you're already, let's say, not flexible, Randy, and then you don't do anything different, well, what's that going to be like in 10 years? It's going to be worse. And we all know that lack of flexibility creates pain and stiffness and aches in our body, because muscles aren't meant to be always in that tension point. They need the release. And so I think we just have to start where we start and know that some people are genetically never going to be super flexible. Like that some people just have shorter hamstrings, or their muscles are different, right? We have those 3 different type of body types. So some muscles are just tighter than others. So that's important to know too. Is okay, so I might not be one of those people that can put my feet behind my head. That's okay, because that's not what yoga is about either, right? It's really about becoming supple so that we can sit and we can breathe, and training our breath through the movement. So we can do the breathing practices. So I think with the lack of flexibility, starting off with something simple and not making it this big thing. If you don't do it, what's going to change? And then again, so then if it's like, okay, well, yoga is just not my thing. And this is where we took all the, as Mark says, the foo out of the kung fu. That's why we named everything in English words and stuff. It's like, well, it's just stretching. This is just getting your body ready so that you can sit and breathe and sit and meditate. Or let's say, going back to a lot of your listeners who are adventurers, can sit on the top of a mountain and not feel like crap physically, and actually feel free, even though you've been carrying around a bunch of extra weight, and I'm sure you guys have found that benefit. And that's what sold me. Again, like, it changed my body and my life so dramatically that I was like, I need to talk about this with other people, like this is like golden. And it was kind of before yoga was really popular. I think that now that it's really accessible too, everyone has access. Everyone can get information, which is so great.
Yeah, there are days I feel that way too. But when I finally get on the mat and go through the practice, I feel much more centered, and I've got a bunch more energy to get me through my day. Do you have a favorite practice or recommendation for someone who wants to learn how to listen to their body better?
I think cat-cow is one of the best ways to start to explore like the physical practice of yoga and breath, because and or child's pose. So say someone's really not out in shape, or they are really tight, cat-cow is accessible to everybody, unless it's hard to be on your knees. But in that case, you can have your legs crossed and just do it in a seated position, where you're like inhaling and exhaling with the legs crossed or even out in front of you. So there's always a way to kind of and what cat-cow ultimately is taking your spine from flexion into extension, and like going deeper into flexion, deeper into extension. So like going into a forward bend and a back bend, basically. So it warms up the spine, and you can learn how to, the breath is meant to guide the the movement. It's not supposed to be a mental, like I'm going to move my body into this. So it's really this inhale is starting to cue the muscular skeletal connection to elongate and go into, axial extension, but ultimately extension of the cow position. And then that exhale is the diaphragm starting to, deflate and all that. So now it's organically, I'm going into flexion, and I can, round my back and feel that and kind of massage into the internal organs. And then child's pose, or even shavasana, where you're just laying flat on your back, not moving, that and exploring the breath in the body and just laying there and breathing into where you have areas of tension is phenomenal. Like you can get so much release just from laying on your back and breathing and starting to notice where there's kinks in the hose, and direct the exhale, like, okay, I'm going to release that tension there. So that's the main, I'd say the one posture, if you're brand new, is like try cat cow, or even just laying on your back, and notice how breathing with awareness into your body for 5 minutes will change the way you feel.
So I mentioned earlier that you're the head facilitator and co-author of Kokoro Yoga. What's your philosophy behind Kokoro Yoga, and what's the difference between Kokoro Yoga and the other yoga options folks have available to them in the marketplace?
Yeah, I think, it's rooted in the traditions of Ashtanga, Vini Yoga, Hatha Yoga, as well as martial arts and some functional fitness. So I think one of the things is that it's the functional fitness and the martial arts is a little more unique. However, there are a few styles of yoga that incorporate martial arts, as well as I'm seeing now some that have like some more of that Western functional fitness in it. So I think and then our philosophy is heart, mind, merging into action. That's the kind of the embodiment of Kokoro. And that to me links up really deeply with also the Zen meditation practices and the Shiva meditation practices. So I think that heart in action piece is a little more unique. However, at the foundation of the philosophy of yoga, at the end of the day, I think that for most part, the practices have similar threads. What's again unique for us is we've taken out the Sanskrit, we've taken out some of the postures that are more advanced, but that can make people feel like, oh, I'm never going to be able to do that. So we just don't really do handstands, headstands, things that you can get hurt really doing, and also that are, in our opinion, a distraction to the meditation practice. So they become goal oriented. So we've kind of eliminated the goal oriented aspect of it out and just tried to make it as applicable to as many people as possible, so that they can have that experience of breath connected to body, and then get into the breathing practices and the meditation practices. So I think that may be the biggest qualifier that's different, is we are super focused on breath and meditation. And like if you come to one of our teacher trainings, we spend a huge amount of time on the philosophy, going through the sutras, on breath and meditation. Whereas like most of the teacher trainings I've ever done, it's much more on like just the physical portion of yoga. But Mark and I are both really dedicated to that, like traditional, again, teachings, but through languaging. And this is where Mark's exceptional. I feel like it's his superpower of taking all these traditions, Eastern traditions, and he's such an avid reader, and then being able to speak to the Western mind in a way that they can understand. That's why I love collaborating with him, because I'm much more of an energetic teacher. I see energy, I do energy healing work. And so for me, it's a transmission of my practices. And so I think the two of us, we have a lot of fun kind of pulling from our own practices what we've learned from other teachers, and then offering that. So that's how I think Kokoro Yoga differs. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Actually, we were curious if you were still going to be offering the Kokoro teacher trainings.
We haven't offered it this year, and again, due to what's going on, we don't know if
Right.
when we will offer it again though. Yeah, it's something that I think is important to continue doing. We've had 5 trainings so far, and we've actually had multiple people return back every single year, which has been a great testament to our training, I feel like.
I'd like to move the conversation on to breath work and proper breathing technique. Can you explain why proper breath work and breathing technique is so important to the outdoor adventurer? After all, we all breathe all the time, right?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest one is how control are you over your physiology? And the breath is the component that allows us to take ourselves from a sympathetic to a parasympathetic state, that we have control over that. So, yeah, we breathe all the time, Andy, and it's often done without any sort of notice. It's just we expect we're going to breathe because we've been doing it in our whole lives. But for a lot of us, we have learned dysfunctional breathing patterns due to injury, or again, who taught us how to breathe. Like maybe they were short of breath. Most of us don't exhale as long as we inhale, and the exhale is like taking out the trash, the waste of the body. And so training to have that equal part inhale and exhale is super important for mental clarity as well, again, as physiology. And I think for the outdoor adventurer, well, are you breathing through your mouth? Are you breathing through your nose? Because if you're breathing through your mouth, you're getting like 15% of the benefits that you could, versus if you're breathing nostrily. So starting to train yourself how to breathe nostrily before you get into stressful situations so that it's automatic. And, and that's like box breathing becomes automatic. Like when you do it for long enough, consistently enough, those kinds of things will turn on in moments of that are a little bit more pressing on you, and you'll just breathe better, which again will keep your mind focused, ultimately will keep you safer, because if you're more focused and clear, you're going to make better decisions. Yeah, and so I think the biggest part of why it's so important to learn about our breaths is first that it's our life force. What's the difference between me and a dead person is the breath is gone. Like like watching, somebody die, you watch them take their last breath and then they're gone. And so in the yoga tradition, and I personally believe this, is that the breath links the spirit to the body. So when you're connected to your breath, you're connecting to your essence of your being. And then you take that into, I'm outdoors and I'm with the spirit of nature, and to be more connected with your own spirit and then be merged with that element that you're in, whether it's the mountains or the beaches, that there's, again, like there's a little bit more of that rich, magnificent presence due to learning how to train your breath. And then like here now I can either, it's like you get handed this power of the breath, and most of us run around again just breathing, just not thinking about it. Or we can take that power and empower ourselves and really design our lives differently by having that awareness and control of breath. It's just, it's hard, I think, to put into words for myself, because it's a game changer. It's like, okay, I'm pissed off at somebody as we're hiking through the mountains. Okay, well, am I breathing right now? No. Can I take 5 deep breaths? Yes. After 5 deep breaths, how am I still pissed off at the person in front of me? Or am I starting to see that, a different perspective? And often like 5 deep breaths, you'll have a different perspective of like something you're projecting onto a fellow, hiker. And you're just like, oh, wow, I'm just didn't sleep that well in my sleeping bag last night. Or, I can see that I just, in those 5 breaths and observing the person ahead of me, can see they're really struggling. So when they cut me off earlier on the trail, like, oh, they probably didn't notice they're struggling right now. Now I can take my eyes off them, myself, and put it on them. And can I help them? Hey, do you want me to take something out of your pack? Put it in my pack, right? So the breath like creates this component of awareness that we often just will default into our minds, but then it slows us down, and that habitual reactive state changes. So that's a huge part for people that are outdoors, is it'll help take away reactions and take you more into action, which again can save your life.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
One of the tenets of outdoor survival, should somebody find themselves in a survival situation, is be where you're at. Said differently, be where you're at in the present moment. Don't worry about the distractions of where you're supposed to be tonight. And one of the techniques I think people can use to bring themselves back to the present moment is a box breathing pattern or a breath awareness pattern of 4 count in, 4 count out, to kind of bring themselves back into the moment and center themselves and kind of control the monkey mind. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, and even especially if someone's really like freaking out, you can put your hand on, can I touch you? Put their hand on them, start to breathe with them. So like helping someone regulate their breath sometimes is one of the best things too, if they're not able to control it on their own.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree.
So, one practice we found to be especially powerful, especially in a time you need extreme focus, is visualization. Can you describe visualization for us?
Yeah, well, and I imagine you're using visualization to like see the trip before it happens. Is that correct? So you're actually visualizing the start to finish and the more challenging pieces of the climb, stuff like that. Is that correct, Kate?
Right. Yeah, so typically we'll visualize the trip as a whole, setting anchors specific to canyoneering, just the steps it takes to move through the canyon from beginning to end, and just work our way through the whole trip.
Yeah, so I think first what that does is it's preparation for the mind so that when the rubber meets the road, the mind has already been there. And so it's not the first time it's happening. So if anything goes wrong, it's not as surprising to the mind. So I think that's a piece of it. So for me, visualization really can help do all the what ifs. What if this happens? Okay, this is what I would do. So again, like, what if an anchor gets pulled out? What would be the next thing, right? And I'm sure you visualize that. This is what I would do. So then if it did happen, it's second nature. It's not, what do I do? Oh my gosh,
Right.
like,
There are two main visualization techniques that I use. The first is rehearsal, and the second is ideal state. With both of them, though, I found the real magic happens when I can add layers of detail. For example, if I'm getting ready to do an ice climb, I'll visualize the cold, I'll visualize my breath, I'll visualize the feel of the ice and how my ice tool sinks in. And when I translate that to the actual climb, things seems to flow so much better.
yeah, and you hit on a really important piece of that in that way of bringing in the senses. It's an important component of visualization. And you can also see like there may be some senses like touch or sound that are easier for you to visualize. And then other senses like taste, that are harder. And then that can also give information of sense where to put time into developing a relationship with that sense organ. And how do you use that sense? Is it like, say taste is challenging for you? Well, are you a mindless eater? And is it, and are you like not really exploring what that sense can do for you, and using again like this amazing human experience, right, of exploration of like touch, taste, hearing, right, like so yes, that's a huge component, to feel the cold, to smell the air, to hear the sound of the wind as you put that in the axe going in, right? All those things are beautiful components of visualization.
So, do you feel visualization is something you can utilize to help heal or recover from an injury or to overcome a particular obstacle in your life?
Yeah, I think with injury, you can visualize the bone, the ligaments, the muscle, whatever's injured healing itself. And so say it's a broken bone, and so starting to visualize the bone replenishing and growing and healing, and using, let's say, a golden white light that's a healing energy on that bone. And so you can definitely use it for that. And also using visualization. So again, say it's a broken, like I broke my ankle a couple years ago. So visualizing walking again, running again, using that ankle and it being 100% healed, better than before. So really making that mind body connection and not giving into, well, I'm broken and this is now I'm gonna, like that's one thing that drives me nuts about like Western doctors are like, it'll never be the same. It's like, that's not true. That's like one potential out of so many. And then you had said, what was the second part of the question? One was for injury and one was for
just overcoming obstacles.
So overcoming obstacles, I think sitting with the obstacle itself and asking why it's there. So it's a little different than visualization, but I think that comes into contemplation, and then you could take it into visualization. But what are you here to teach me? Why are you presenting itself? Are you really there, or is it my perception? So you could take yourself through in a visualization different variety of perspectives of that obstacle, and may discover it's not really an obstacle, it's an opportunity. I mean, all obstacles ultimately we know are opportunities, or that what's you're perceiving as an obstacle is actually a complete misperception because of your state of mind, and that will save you from reacting again to something that's not real. So a lot of times, like the yoga teachings, one of the teachings in the sutras as well is we have a fundamental misperception of what's actually happening. Mm-hmm. So just think of that, like we all on a daily basis have a fundamental misperception of what's happening. So if we have an obstacle, is it an obstacle? It very much could be, but why is it there then? And then visualizing how am I, so say it's a conversation, a crucial conversation, right, with your partner. Mm-hmm. There's an obstacle, like this is happening, I'm frustrated, but I'm so hooked in what they did wrong in my head. So then I could visualize the conversation going the way it always has, which leads to disconnection, separation, takes us a week to come back together, something like that. And then I can play out that scenario. Then I can play out the scenario where what's my part in this? Okay, so can I apologize for my part in it and then hold space and empathy for my partner to express what they're, what's happening for them. And this could be a partnership romantically, it could be business, it could, anything. And then visualize, how does that feel? Well, that feels a little bit better because now both people are involved, and it's also not going to go the way that ultimately leads to disconnection. There's an opportunity for more connection. So there's that's one of the things is that there's an obstacle. Well, what's my need? What's my unmet need that's happening? What do I need to happen? How do I get that met usually? So you can kind of visualize that usual way, and then play out a couple scenarios. And then one will kind of ding, 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 this is the best case scenario. And I think often what visualizing multiple scenarios will give us is it empowers us. I've used that word quite a bit while we've been talking, but it empowers, engages us in knowing we can make different choices and how we approach and address situations with people. So that's one thing I love about visualization with conversations, especially is, is this going to work for me?
Thank you, Catherine. We've been talking for quite a while now, and we're coming to the end of our time together. Where can folks find out more about these powerful transformational practices we've been talking about? And where can folks find out more about your upcoming book?
Yeah, well, I think Unbeatable Mind, the Foundations course, is a great place to start for people. And highly always recommend the book Unbeatable Mind by Mark Divine. I think that is just an excellent read, and it applies to anybody and any age can really get a lot out of that book. Also, we have Kokoro Yoga On Demand, which is a library of 300 videos. So if you're feeling like you're not flexible and you want to stretch after our conversation, then that's there's a variety of practices that are really all levels, any one of the practices on there that anyone can do, and just scale accordingly. And I'm always available in that way. If people start our programs, they have questions, they can always reach out to me. My email is Catherine@unbeatablemind.com. So I'm always happy to discuss the Unbeatable Mind coaching course, the foundations course, as well as our Kokoro yoga course. And with my book, it will be on Amazon. The title is Sacred Silence. My name is Chapman Divine, and it's a book on meditation and visualization. And so that should be available by early to mid-August. I'm just finishing up with the artwork. Yeah.
We're very excited to read the book.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very welcome.
Thank you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, and hopefully we'll all be able to get outside and benefit from a little nature sooner than later.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I just really appreciate you guys asking me to participate with you in this discussion, and love seeing both of you. So happy that you're out there in the world sharing your light and your love for nature and the work, and really just find you both just so passionate, and enjoyed meeting you in person. And it's wonderful to see you again on Zoom. So.
Likewise.
So Catherine, your traditional sign off, Huyahe Namaste.
Huyahe Namaste.
Thanks, Catherine. Live fiercely.
Okay, bye.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
guys.
Bye.